In this lesson, we are going to talk about bounds for partially ordered sets. Suppose that we have a partial order for a set A, and suppose that we have a subset of A. We say that an element is an upper bound for B if and only if that element is sort of greater than all the elements of A. So take note that what this means is that your upper bound may or may not be an element of B. This is your B. We are looking for an upper bound for B. And let's say this is my set A. An upper bound would be something like this. And if you draw the Hash diagram, all the other elements of B would be smaller than this element A. Similarly, for a lower bound for A, so we have our B here. This is my set A. A lower bound is something which is smaller than all the other elements of B. So if you look at the diagram, this one here would be a lower bound for B. So, for example, let us consider this set. We have the set of natural numbers from 1 to 10, and we have this family of sets. These are subsets of your set S because we are considering the partial order subset relation for the power set of S. Let us find an upper bound and lower bound for F. So first, I have drawn here the Hash diagram for my set F, and therefore, by our definition, an upper bound would be anything which would be greater than, but of course, in this case, greater than here, it means that it will contain all the elements of your set F. So therefore, an upper bound would be the set 1, 4, 5, 7, 8 because it contains all the other elements of F. We can also have the set 1, 2, 3, the entire set S up to 10. This is also an upper bound. So we can have many upper bounds. So in general, what would be an upper bound for this set F? An upper bound would be any X. Let me put it here. As long as it contains the set 1, 4, 5, 7, and 8. What about lower bounds? A lower bound would be the set containing 1, 4, 7 because all the elements of F are less than, because 1, 4, 7 is less than or equal to all the other elements of F. And we can also have the set 1, 4. We can also have the set 1, right? Again, when I say less than, the relation here is subset, correct? So anyway, I keep on interchanging less than with subset. But in general, if we're talking about a partial order, right, we can always view the relation. I will always be referring to that relation as less than or equal to. Okay, so anyway, so we have a lot of upper bounds for our set F. Now, in general, what would be a lower bound? It will be a lower bound as long as it is inside the set 1, 4, 7. So meaning to say you are lower. You will be inside the set 1, 4, 7. So you will be lower. So notice here that a lower bound may not be inside your set. In this particular case, so for example, 1 is outside the set F, but it is a lower bound. Also, this one, the set 1 up to 10, it is an upper bound, okay? But it is outside your set F. What about the total order, the usual less than or equal to on the set of real numbers? This is not just a partial order, but actually a total order on R. Let's find upper bounds and lower bounds for these two intervals, 0, 1, and the closed interval, 0, 1. So, if we consider 0, 1, what would be your upper bound? An upper bound would be any element which is, anything which is greater than 1, correct? So, any x as long as that x is greater than or equal to 1. And a lower bound would be any number which is here, you would be less than or equal to 1, correct? Any element in this set would be an upper bound for the open interval 0, 1, and any element here would be a lower bound for the open interval 0, 1. And also, it's the same, that will also be the same for the closed interval 0, 1. Okay, so this one will also be upper bounds, and this one will also be the lower bounds for the same set. Okay, we have seen in the previous examples that an upper bound or a lower bound may or may not be inside the set that we are considering. So if it so happens that the upper bound is inside that set that we are considering, then we say that that is a maximum element of the set B. Similarly, if a lower bound is contained in the set that we are considering, then we say that it will be a minimum element. So if we go back to our previous example here, if we look at all the upper bounds for this set F, which upper bound is inside the set that we are considering? Remember, we are considering the set F here. So this one would be our maximum element, and this is a lower bound which is inside our set. So therefore, this is our minimum element. How about for our total ordering on R? What would be a maximum element and minimum element for these two intervals? Now, if we look at the set, the closed interval 0, 1, does it have an upper bound which is inside this set? None, right? So this one has no maximum element, and it has also no minimum element, correct? Because all the upper bounds are outside the set, and also all the lower bounds are outside of this set. However, for the closed interval 0, 1, our maximum element would be 1, and our minimum element would be 0. Now again, let me just reiterate the fact that an upper or lower bound may or may not belong to the set that we are considering. And also, as we have seen in our example on the open interval 0, 1, a set does not necessarily have either a maximum or a minimum element. Suppose we have a subset of a partially ordered set. This may sound a little bit confusing, but I will tell you the difference later on. We say that an element is maximal if for all elements in B, the set that we are considering, then M is not less than or equal to B. Again, this less than or equal to is the relation. So this is the partial order on the set A. So what does it mean? That for all elements of B, your M is not less than or equal to B. You have our M here. you cannot find any elements of B which are greater than M. Let me just draw it here so that the definition is on the screen. So again, this is saying that if this is my M, all the elements of your set B should be below it if you draw the Hash diagram. Okay? That means you cannot find, so this one is saying M is not less than or equal to B. You cannot find anything on top. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, then what is the difference of a maximal element with a maximum element? Because this one sort of looks like our maximum element. Correct? Okay. First, notice what's the similarity. The first similarity muna before we proceed with the difference is that a maximal element has also be contained inside our set B. Understand? Okay? So that's why when I drew it here, my M is inside the set B. Similarly, for a maximum element, you have to be inside the set. However, here's the difference. The maximal definition only states that you cannot find other elements of B which are above M. So meaning to say, it's possible that you have something like that. And then you have M2. Understand? So in this case, both M1 and M2 are maximal elements. Understand? So meaning to say, if you have a maximal element is greater than or equal to all the other elements which it is comparable to. Okay? If we compare that with a maximum element, it means that all the other elements of B should be smaller than M. Can you see the difference here? This is not comparable to M1, understand? But M2 is a maximal element because for all the elements to which it is comparable to, it is always the biggest. So in calculus, you might think of it as the local. So you might think of it as the local extrema. However, for the maximum element, you can think of it as the sort of your absolute maximum. Okay? Absolute maximum value. Whereas for this one, it's just a local. So that is just one way that you can remember these terms. Alright? So similarly, for a minimal element, it says that for all elements of the set, so this is my M, you cannot find anything under M. You cannot find it. So meaning to say, all the elements are either above M or it is not comparable to M. Understand? So either, again, it's like this or it is not comparable. So that's why in here, so just like what we had earlier, you can have more than one minimal elements. So we have M1, then you have these elements here, M2, and you have this. Whereas for a minimum element, then everything must be comparable. So it has to be smaller than all the elements of B. Okay, let's have another example. So I have here the Hash diagram for the power set of A, but this time around I deleted the set A. Let us determine the maximum, minimal, and minimum elements if they exist. Alright, so if we look at this from our diagram, this, and this are maximal elements, correct? Because you cannot find anything above them, right? So again, if you look at our diagram earlier here, right? So all the elements that they are comparable to, it will be smaller. It will be less than them, okay? However, do we have a maximum element? Do we have a maximum element? We have none, right? Because there is no element for which all the other elements of this set will be smaller than it. Okay, there is. What about minimal elements? Okay, so if you look at the Hass diagram, this is a minimal element, and it also happens to be our minimum element. Correct? Okay, now, this is our last set of definitions. So, for the supremum, so again, suppose we have a partial order, and we still have our B, which is a subset of A. When is an element a least upper bound or supremum? Okay, so take note first here that in the definition, the element must be an upper bound for B. And notice also this element here may or may not be an element of the set B because A is an upper bound. I have mentioned earlier that an upper bound may or may not be inside your set. Okay, so first you have to be an upper bound. Okay, I already gave the definition for that. So that satisfies this. And then it says here that it has to be the least. So meaning to say, if you get any upper bound for B, then your element must be less than or equal to that set. So meaning to say, A is an upper bound. All the elements of B will be below it. So this one would be all the elements of B. But if you compare it with any upper bound, again, X is an upper bound, then A has to be less than or equal to that. Okay, this is how a supremum looks like. So similarly, for an infimum or a greatest lower bound, first, from the definition, you have to be a lower bound for B. So this is my B. So my A, again, may or may not be inside B. So it has to be a lower bound. And among all the other lower bounds, it has to be greater than that. Okay? So that is our definition of an infimum. So again, what is now the difference between a maximum and a supremum? They look almost the same. The only difference is that for a maximum element, the maximum element has to be inside your set. Whereas for a supremum, maybe I should draw that here. My M is here, and then all the other elements of B are here. Whereas for a supremum, it may or may not be inside your set. I should have it here. It can be inside, so it can be a maximum element, or it can also be outside. Okay? So the same is true for the minimum and the infimum. If you have a minimum element, it has to be inside the set. Whereas for an infimum, you may or may not be inside the set. Okay? So again, this is my B. And this is my E. Okay, so again, let's go back to our previous example. What would be a supremum and infimum for F? So in this case, our maximum element will also be our supremum, correct? So this is our sup F, and this is our infimum of F. Actually, it is a good exercise to prove that if B has a minimum element, then has a minimum element X, then X is an infimum of B. And also, if B has a maximum element, then that would be your supremum of B. What about these sets? We want to find supremum and infimum. So for set A, so what would be the supremum of A? The least among all the upper bounds, it has to be 4, correct? And what will be our infimum? The greatest among all lower bounds would be 0, right? What about for B? What would be the supremum of B? So here, the supremum of B would be 12, correct? And the infimum of B is just the lowest, so that's -4. So notice here that my supremum of A is not inside A, whereas here the supremum is an element of B. What about for letter C? For letter C, what would be the supremum of C? Let's write down some of the elements of C. You're starting with natural numbers, so k equals 0. So we have 2 to the 0, which is 1, 2, 2 squared, and so on. Right? So what would be the supremum of C? Do we have an upper bound for this? We have none. What about the infimum of C? The infimum of C would be the smallest value, which is 1. What about for D? We're starting with 2 to the -0, so that's 1, 2 to the -1, which is 1/2, correct? So what would be the supremum of D? The supremum of D is 1, whereas its infimum is none, right? We have no infimum. What about this one? Let A be the set of all positive divisors of 1000 with ordering relation divides on A. And we consider our set B. We want to find the upper bound, lower bound. If we want to find an upper bound, a lower bound, infimum, and supremum of B. So first, let's draw the Hass diagram. So I have 10. Our relation is divides. 10 divides 20. 20 divides 100. What else? 25 divides 100. And that's it. This is our Hass diagram. Okay, what would be your upper bounds? It's just telling you to give an upper bound. At least one. So, let me just write, of course, we have 100. This is my set B, and it is inside your set A. So, an upper bound may or may not be inside your B. So, why is 250 not an upper bound? Because 20 does not divide 250, right? So, that is not an upper bound. So, what else? You can have 500, right? How about lower bounds? We can have 1, 5. For example, 5 divides all of this. So that is a lower bound. Is 10 a lower bound? No, because 10 does not divide 25. Supremum, sup of B. What will be a supremum of B? Then it has to be 100, correct? Because all the elements are under 100, correct? And just so happens that it is also, take note that this is also your maximal element, right? How about the infimum? Infimum of B. So since our only lower bounds are 1 and 5, then our greatest lower bound would be 5. And notice that this infimum is not inside your set B. But still, B has an infimum. What about minimum element? Do we have a minimum element? The answer is none. Correct? Because 10 is not comparable to 25. If 10 is a minimum element, then it has to be less than or equal to all the elements of B. Okay, here is an important theorem. This theorem is saying that you can only have one supremum and you can only have one infimum. I will be proving this part. So I will prove the uniqueness of the supremum. So how do we prove uniqueness? Again, here my assumption is that I will already write this. Let B be a subset of a partially ordered set A. Suppose B has a supremum. So how do we prove uniqueness? So suppose A1 and A2 are both supremums of your set B. In the end, we want to show that A1 is equal to A2. How will we show that A1 is the same as A2? Our key here, the underlying principle, would be the anti-symmetry of our partial order relation. So, meaning to say, we want to end up with A1 like that and A2, correct? Because by anti-symmetry, this one is saying A1 is related to A2 and A2 is related to A1. By anti-symmetry, they must be equal. They are both supremums, so therefore they are both lower bound. So let me just say, so since A1 is an upper bound, right? For you to be a supremum, you have to be an upper bound. And A2 is a supremum of B, then supremum means you have to be the least among all the upper bounds. So this means that A2 is less than or equal to A1, correct? Again, this less than or equal to is the partial order relation. Let me write it here. This is the partial order on the set A. So similarly, since A2 is an upper bound and A1 is a supremum of B, so A1 has to be smaller than the upper bound A2. And now, by anti-symmetry of our partial order relation, we now get that A1 is equal to A2. And the proof for the uniqueness of the infimum is very much similar to that. So it is a good exercise for you to do it. We usually consider the partial ordering subset relation, correct? We have a non-empty set, and then we're always getting the set of all subsets of the set S, just like what we had in example 1, this one, right? So we want to find a general way of getting the infimum and supremum of such kinds of examples. We have seen that the infimum is this one and the supremum is this one. This is actually the union of all the sets in F, correct? And what about this infimum? This infimum is the intersection of all the elements in your set F. We can actually generalize that again. So this is saying that to get the supremum of a family of subsets, all you have to do is to get the union of all the sets. And to get the infimum, all you have to do is to get the intersection of all the sets. So before I prove this, let me first give you an illustration of how to use this theorem. So for instance, we have the set of natural numbers and we have this F here. F is a family of sets, a set containing sets. So just for you to imagine, let's write it here. A1 is 1, 2, and actually it's the entire set N, right? A2 starts with 2. A3 starts with 3, 4, and so on. Correct? So, using our theorem, what would be the supremum of the set F? According to the result, all we have to do is to just get the union of all the sets inside our set F. So, therefore, that's the union of AN, correct? And in the set of natural numbers. What is the union of all of this? That is just the entire set of natural numbers. Actually, that's the set A1. What about the infimum of f? According to the theorem, all we have to do is to get the intersection of all the sets. What would be the intersection of all the sets? This set is the null set. So this is not saying that we have no infimum. It's just saying that the infimum is the null set. Null set contains all the a sub n's, correct? Right? So meaning to say null set is a lower bound, and actually it is the only lower bound. So definitely that will be the greatest lower bound. We cannot find any more sets smaller than the null set. Let us now proceed in proving this theorem. What I will do is to show this one. The supremum is just getting the union of all the sets in the family. So let me first write that in layman's terms. So to get the supremum of a family of sets, we just have to get the union of all the sets in the given family of sets. So this is what we want to do. We want to show that the supremum of f is the union of all the sets inside the family. Okay, so suppose, just for easy writing, let me just denote this by C. How do we show that C is the supremum? Okay, first we want to show that C is an upper bound for f. What does it mean for C to be an upper bound for f? It means that if we get any set in f, so for any E in f, E has to be, our relation here is a subset relation, E has to be a subset of C. Second, we want to show that C is the smallest among all upper bounds for f. How do we write that mathematically? If D is an upper bound, then C has to be less than or equal to D. What would be a quantifier here? For all D in, where is D? D is in the power set of S, correct? Because our diagram here is that this is my F and this is just inside your power set of S. Okay, let's prove the first one. So we have here for all D in F, so let D be an element of F. We want to show that D is a subset of C. Again, what is our C? Our C is the union of all the sets, correct? But if D is just a set here, right? Then that means that D will be definitely inside the union. So it automatically follows. So note that D will be inside the union. So that's it. Next, for number 2, so let E, let me just write here, be a subset of S, because I have E is an element of the power set of S, and then we have, suppose that E is an upper bound for F. We want to show that C is contained in E. Okay, sorry, I just made use of different variables here, but it's still the same. To do this, we are showing subset relation. So how do we do that? We get an arbitrary element in C and then show that it must be in E. So we have let X be an element of C, but remember that C is the union of all the sets in F. What does it mean for X to be in the union? By definition, then there exists a Y, a set in the family such that X is an element of Y. What do we want to do again? We want to show that X is in E. But what is our E here? Our assumption is that E is an upper bound for F. So since E is an upper bound for F and Y is in F, what can we now say about Y and E? Then E must contain Y. But what is that? We started with X is an element of C, and then we have shown that X is in Y, and Y is a subset of E. So therefore, X must be in E. We have started with X is in C, and then X is in E. So our final conclusion is that C is a subset of E. So we have proved these two conditions, which now means that C is our supremum. We have shown the uniqueness of the supremum, so therefore C is the supremum of F. That concludes the proof of this theorem.